What's up, YouTube? Mitch Llama here, and today I want to talk about my top 7 issues with Path of Exile 2. Now, Path of Exile 2, I have a video of my top 7 great things about it. I think the foundation of the game is fantastic. It will lead the game to be a staple in the RPG scene for the future, but there are some problems with the game and some things that I do think they need to address. Now, I'd be curious if you agree or disagree with these. You can always leave a comment down below. But here are my top 7. Number 1, and probably the biggest issue I have with the game, is the map size of the game. And it's not just that the maps are kind of big. The maps are absolutely massive. Here is an example of one of the maps. This was Legend Killer shared it on Path of Exile subreddit. And it is disgusting. You can see down here, there is the waypoint over here, and that gives you a sense of size. Your character's maybe, as big as my cursor right here. And these maps are windy and they take you all over the place. This doesn't even show the whole map. This isn't showing what's all up here, what's all down here. This is just one map in the game. It's like, the stony field or whatever it is. They're so big, and it's every single map is like this. Honestly, I would say take 30 to 40% of map size and remove it, and then in some cases take like 50 to 60% in a couple of the maps and remove that, because it's just so tedious and it's such a slog to get through them. And what really can make it super awful is 2 things. Number 1, a lot of times it'll be like this giant map and you'll need to find one little thing. It'll be like, to advance to the next map, you need to find a small key, and that key will unlock the door and you can go to the next map. So I have to explore this entire map looking for a small key, and if I, for instance, don't look in this spot right here, I might be there for an hour, and I'm not even joking. There was literally a map I was in for almost an hour for a single map before I could get to the next spot, and that was without even dying, which I'm going to talk about right now as number 2. When you die, all of the loot disappears and all of the monsters respawn. So the idea is, if you die, you weren't strong enough, so it respawns the monsters so you can get more experience fighting through and going through the area. The idea, in theory, sounds nice. What actually happens is you were looking for that stupid key, whatever, and you wanted to search right in this spot all the way over here, and you die, and it resets you all the way back to here, and now you have to fight through everything to get right back to that spot. It is a terrible feeling because you cannot just run through the maps. And that is something that I do like, but also I think might be a little overdone with it as well, is the fact that, or at least you have to take into account when you're creating a map this big, is that you can't just run through them because there are a lot of tight corridors. Your roll doesn't have phasing. If you get cornered, you will die. White mobs are extremely powerful. So you have to fight every single monster, essentially. You have to full clear these maps if you're really going to be pushing forward, or at least full clear everything that you encounter. Now, additionally, to go with that, that means you are kiting constantly backwards. So again, if you want to get to this section because you think maybe this has it, you have to go all through here, and you're kiting back, fighting in here, kiting back, right? You are doing so much of that throughout, and it will take you another 10, 15 minutes just to get back to the spot that you were trying to get to in the first place. It's tough. It is hard, and not in a good way. I love the difficulty of this game, but this is not difficult so much as tedious and kind of boring, and I think this will be the number 1 leader to burnout in the game. I think there's going to be plenty of people, because people are enjoying it, right? We're playing the game, we're having a lot of fun, but even I myself am feeling a little bit of burnout as I'm watching and playing and going through these giant maps looking for the tiny key or looking for whatever it is to advance. And I'm like, I just want to get to the boss, or I just want to get to the next area at least. And I think this slog is going to be too much for many people and will be a big reason that many people leave the game. So I am hoping and placing my money. I am making a bet that I believe they will reduce the size of maps within the next 6 months, guaranteed. Llama putting his money on it. I mean, I don't have anywhere to gamble actually, but I'm putting my word. I believe they will bring down the size of these maps because right now it is too much. They're too big and they are going to just bore people. Honestly, I think that's it. They will just bore people from being too big, not letting you advance. That's number one. Number two is the number of loot drops. Here's another funny thing from the Reddit that I think is a great way to describe it. And just in general, there's even more from it, right? The idea is there is no loot in this game. It's to a point where you're like, what am I supposed to do with gear? And it's not just that you're finding this when you are playing through and you're trying to, like, okay, I'm not getting some loot from some like white monsters or anything. There's no loot from any monsters whatsoever. You'll clear entire maps and you will find no loot whatsoever. There will be just no drops. Okay, so there were 0 drops from all of those guys. And that's, I mean, I'm not saying everything needs to have drops, but here's a rare. Okay, we're going to find something sweet. I actually did find something sweet. That's pretty rare that you find a rare item that you would actually consider using. It's funny, the one time you try and do an example of it and show, it's like, oh yeah, we're going to give you an item. So rare boots are great. I would love to find rare boots like that. But you're often, hitting chests. Nothing dropped from the chest. You're killing mobs. Nothing's dropped from the mobs. You're killing bosses. Nothing drops from the bosses. I'll go and I'll kill an act boss. And from the act boss, we'll drop a flask and a white amulet. And I'm like, wait, no, this was an act boss. Like, this is a boss I was killing. I'm supposed to get something. And so, I mean, literally, I'll even go pick that up if we want, Like, nothing is dropping. And I'm not going to just play forever here. I'll continue forward with the video. But I wanted to at least give a small sense. Pretend those rare boots didn't drop, because that's pretty rare to happen. That is essentially what you are getting, is all the rest of the stuff. I'm finding a bow that I'm not going to use that. I'm finding some white boots. I found a white amulet. That was from before. And that's kind of it. And so you go through and do these entire maps and do these entire pieces, and you get no gear. Now, I'm not saying that you need to give me all of the gear that you give in Path of Exile 1, where you need a loot filter at the start. I'm not saying you even need to give me as much loot as you find in Diablo 2. I'm not saying you need to give me all the loot you find in D4 or any of these games. But there needs to be like a little bit more, right? The game is hard, but you need gear to advance and to progress. And it feels like you'll go through multiple areas, multiple zones, which again can take 30 minutes to an hour for a zone, and you get nothing. You like go through the entire time and you're like, I haven't upgraded any gear whatsoever with that. And then additionally, they talked about wanting crafting to be important, but where's all the currency in the game? If I go and show you my currency currently, I am level 46, and I have been trying to use all of my, I have been trying to craft things, but like, there's not much. I have found a single orb of alchemy through this entire time. All my regal orbs have just come from the regal shards I've gotten from disenchanting, of which I think I've had 4 maybe. Exalts have been okay. I've at least had a few exalts, but really I've only been using the exalts on like my bow and stuff because, I want to use that. I've used no chaos and no val orbs. And then transmutes and augmentation are nice, and you actually get like some of those as you're playing through the game, but really you're just using them for chancing because there's no more orbs of alteration. And so basically what happens is I'll pick up a white bow, or I'll pick up, a white belt or a flask or whatever it is, and I'll transmute it, and then I'll augment it. And then if it doesn't have a good mod from one of those two, then it's just garbage and I toss it. And then I just wait until I get the next nice bow to do something with, right? And that's it. Like that's all you can really do. You rarely get to upgrade things to rare. Again, I found one alchemy and I haven't used it because I'm like, it's so rare I have to use it on something that's going to be good later on. So if you want me to be crafting, I need to have stuff to craft with, and I need to get more of this. So I think they need to increase the currency drops, give me more regals, give me more alks, give me more exalts, and make it so I'm actually feeling like, yeah, I'm able to really start making gear, because gear is such an important piece of all of this. And that'll go into point 3. We'll get there in 1 second. But gear is very important, so I need to be able to have it. So the amount of loot that's useful dropping needs to improve a little. And then the amount of currency as well, I think, needs to improve. And I don't want it to be, again, too crazy. But I feel like I got better loot in patch 1.0 of Diablo 2. Or in Diablo 1, I find loot more often. And you just, in a game that's about loot and is about feeling that progression, and feeling rewarding with all of that, you really want to feel like you're able to at least get stuff more along the way. So I do hope that they increase that. Number 3 is going to be item randomness. And this goes with what I talked about before, which is there's no alteration whatsoever. And so and not much loot is dropping. And so there's a big difference between if I find a sick bow with really good physical damage, or if I get a bow and am able to roll good physical damage onto it, or if I just have a bow that doesn't have it. And, and there's a massive difference between this, and then that makes a massive difference in the game, right? So for instance, this was my previous bow that I was using, one of these two. Let's use this one. This was my previous bow that I was using, and my DPS is 797. And then I got this bow, and my DPS is 1966. And in a game that is extremely hard, let me tell you, the difference between 800 and 2000 DPS is night and day. It goes from me actually being able to advance through and fight mobs to me having to kite mobs back halfway across the map. And that's what I was having to do a majority of the game with a lot of this gear. And again, that comes down to just randomness of are you able to get that or not? And when there's so little loot and so little ways to actually kind of force it, it makes it even more random and makes it even more impossible to know. So that has been honestly pretty frustrating, I would say, to me, is playing through that. Additionally, stuff like on your flask, you have to basically have gains charges per second, because if you don't have that, your flask will just run out in the middle of your boss fights and stuff, and you'll just be dead or in the middle of running around. And so that makes stuff like that even less like you have options and things, right? Because there are some affixes that are kind of required in some of the slots that you have, but it's so hard to get them all of the time because it's so hard to find the loot. Yeah. All right. I don't want to beat it too much. Also, I do want to say I am level 46 and I have found 0 jewels to go in my jewel socket. Literally 0 jewels have dropped for me. So I have a jewel socket empty. And it feels like by the time you get there, you should have some option to have that. Number 4 is going to be skills and build progression overall. It doesn't feel super great. I don't feel like the build progression is currently there. I'm playing a ranger. I know some other people have said this on some other characters. I don't know if it's every single class or anything, but I know that other people have said it. So for instance, I will show you. Let me actually grab a gem because I like showing it from here. The gem skills, obviously you can look at all of the gems and stuff, and there's all the different things you can do, but I am playing a lightning bow ranger, and a lightning arrow and lightning rod were the skills that I got at level 1, and they are still the skills that I use at level 46, and nothing has really changed since that point. I still go and I shoot my lightning rods and then shoot my lightning arrows into it. Now, it is possible that I could, have gone into like Stormcaller and lightning rod or something. But essentially, the lightning arrow build feels like there's not much to it, right? It's just like that's what it is. And it kind of saddens me because I was really hoping that there would be more progression. I start out shooting like a lightning arrow, and then I'm shooting like a split lightning beam, and then I'm doing a call of storms, raining arrows of lightning, or whatever, right? I'm just making stuff up off the top of my head. But like, it feels like there should have been a lot more in that way. But literally from level 1 to 46, nothing has changed with my skills, with my build, in any way of how I'm shooting stuff. And to make matters worse, and this is probably my saddest overall piece with it, is the support gems, and I have heard other people saying this as well, the support gems just feel bad. I feel like I don't care about them. And it makes me sad. I have many extra slots on many of my skills, and even on my main skills, I don't really feel like I care that much. There's so many of them are so meaningless, and there are some okay ones, but like there's a lot of supports. And first off, it takes a long time before you can even get to the tier 2 supports, and I'm not even at the tier 3 supports yet. But then within it, it just feels like there's so many of these support gems that I'm just not using. And so then when I do get to my bow, okay, or when I get to my lightning arrow, like, yeah, they're okay, but like, I'm not using this. I'm not using that. And I don't want to use it because this does, dealing less damage, or this does, whatever. And I can't afford that. This has less attack speed. And like, I need to use that for also my main damage skill for my single targets. And that's not working well. So I've found that so many gems and support gems are literally just sitting in my stash, even tier 2 support gems, while I have open slots on my gem slots, because I have nothing that I want to actually put into those slots. And that to me is not a good feeling. I'd be curious if everybody else is feeling this on other characters as well, but especially considering the fact that they took away the ability to have them in more than one spot. So I can't have martial tempo, 25% more attack speed. Oh, that would be great on lots of my skills, but I can only have it on one, right? So they took the ability to put this in other slots away, and I thought that was a good change at first, but they need to like quadruple the number of actual support gems then, so there's actually some care for me, because right now it just feels like there's so few skills and so few support gems that I actually care about, that actually mean anything to me, that again, I just have all these empty slots and I have the gems to fill them, but I don't have support gems to fill them. I have nothing else that I want to go in there or that matters enough. So that's number 4. Number 5 is the passive tree itself. Now, for some people, this might be a little intimidating and daunting. It's even bigger than the Path of Exile 1 tree. And when I heard that, I was actually pretty excited. But when I actually got into the tree, I found it to be a little bit bland. And I do think there's a positive and negative to that. The positive is, in Path of Exile 1, there were so many things about the skill tree that it felt like you could get baited and trapped into. There were like early nodes nearby that you thought looked really good, but to make your build really go off, you'd need to get down to here and go there, or get to these key nodes, Oasis or Glancing Blows or Elemental Equilibrium. Like, there'd be these keys that you needed to get to. And so here, there's not really that. It's like, it's less needed for the optimization, but at the same time, I also feel like there's really not a lot of power boost. Everything has really just been, like increased chance to shock and then increased damage for each type of ailment, and damage penetrates lightning res, and now it just penetrates a little more lightning res. So I'm just kind of like going into nodes that give me small boost and are okay, but I'm not crazy excited about really many of the nodes on the tree. So it feels like it has lost the power spikes to it and some of the just like big fun to it. And additionally, because the game moves so slowly, you also get less passive points per hour that you're playing and stuff. And so it feels like you're really not putting a lot into it as you're going through, right? It feels like you're just kind of barely getting points. And, I'm like, if I see something all the way over here and I'm like, oh my God, this would be amazing, I don't have time to get that. That's like 3 hours of travel nodes just to get down there into there, So it feels like you really do kind of have to stick pretty nearby. Obviously, as things get more optimized and fleshed out with all of it and stuff, like, I'm sure this will be less of a thing. This is not my biggest complaint, but it was something that I did notice, was I felt like I just wasn't quite seeing and feeling the power that I was hoping to when I was going through the tree. Now, number 6 is the trials. Holy cow. The trials are brokenly strong in a not great feeling way. You have Sanctum and Ultimatum, and the honor system, just feels really like, I said 1 and A, it feels really broken towards range. It feels like if I'm a melee, how am I supposed to not get hit? Like, a lot of characters are going to be in there. I mean, that just feels rough. So I already feel like it was broken towards me, but also just like, I don't know, something about the honor system was not that fun to play through. And then when you'd get to the final boss and there were volcanoes that would just randomly explode all around and would take your honor away, dying to that volcano was not a good feeling at all. Like, and then you have to go through the entire trial again and the entire trial again. And it just was hard and not the most fun. But the other trials I hated even more because the stupid nodes for it, the modifiers for every level of the trial were just insane. First off, the energy shield one is broken. If you get the energy shield node, you can't complete it because the final boss will have like 500,000 energy shield and you can't kill him. If somebody has killed the energy shield node boss, please let me know because I don't believe it. It was ridiculous. So that's the first one. That's probably just maybe a bug, I hope. But additionally, if you get like the reduced regen, if you get any of the ones that have the like, you're kind of like, I mean, God, you're take all this increased damage. Monsters do all this massive more damage and have 50% more health and whatever stuff. Like, they're just crazy numbers. It's like maybe 10% or something, but the numbers that they have on it just made these fights like near impossible. So you have that, but then if you go into the ones that are like a orb of blood goes over you and drops down damage to kill you, or there's a circle and if you step in it lightning beams come down. You're like, okay, I kind of have to choose these. So you pick those and you think things are fine, and then you get to a spot where you have to take an elevator and you go to the elevator and then it spawns on top of the elevator while your character's like going through the animation, pulling in and getting on, and they just die. And you're like, okay. And then it sends you all the way back and you have to do the whole trial again. I went through that stupid trial like 9 times or something. Once I disconnected, twice I died on the elevator because of that thing. And then there was just deaths from, I got nodes that are just impossible. The energy shield boss was impossible to kill. I mean, it was rough. These are feeling so overtuned in these trials that I didn't even feel like they were fun. By the end of them, I was so just done. I did not even care to get the ascendancy points the most. I was like, just get me out of these. I'm so tired of having to repeat them and get all the way to, the final boss to get to the 3rd spot and then have an impossible selection that I can't beat. It didn't feel great. I really hope that they make some changes there. And my number 7 is going to just be white mobs are probably a little bit overtuned. And again, I really like the difficulty. And I think if you reduce the map size, I think if you improve the gear drops and the currency drops, just the amounts, right, with it a little bit, I think the white mobs will not feel nearly as overtuned. But right now, with all of those pieces and with how big the maps are, trying to go through and clear, an entire area or fight because you have to, because if you have, dangerous areas, is just brutal. And to go with this as well, which I think is an important point, is you have, and I actually am like in a really great spot right now because again, I just upgraded to this sick bow that does amazing damage. If I didn't have this bow, just know these are terrible. These feel absolutely horrible, right? So that is like a big change in making this look a little bit easier than it actually should be. I mean, in fact, I want to go back and grab my other bow because let's pretend I don't have that bow, So when you're going through these giant maps and the white mobs are feeling like they're feeling and you don't feel like you can have all the sweet loot, we'll put on the dual shot and stuff. It's just hard. And you're kiting and you're kiting and you're fighting. And this is honestly the strongest and best that I feel like my character has been. Like this is the best he's been built out. I've got the frenzy charges now, and I've got the Herald of Ash with the thing in my tree, and it's still really hard. And again, if the maps were not gigantic, if there wasn't all of this like other stuff going on, I'd probably feel a little bit less negative towards this. But as it stands, it can definitely just be tedious. As some people have said, it feels like you're a little bit on a treadmill and you can't get off. Right? It just continues going and you're just constantly moving forward and you're just constantly kiting and fighting that group, and then you're fighting the next group, and then these monsters are here on top of you, and then like I'm going backwards so I can actually go to town really fast. So it just feels like it can be a little bit exhausting and you don't really get a break between all of that. And there's no phasing with your roll whatsoever, which I like the idea that you can be surrounded. I think that's a great thing that it does exist in D2. It makes positioning important. It makes all of that. But when the mobs are so strong that you're just getting surrounded by all these tiny little guys and then you can't bust out of them because a lot of mobs swarm you, I think that is probably the slightly more frustrating part. And the hitboxes can sometimes be a little wonky. And so you're like there and you try and roll away, but you're trying to get through this gap and you didn't quite roll into the gap correctly. So your character just like does a spin on the ground and then the mobs fully surround you and then you're dead. And it's like, well, that didn't feel very good. So I'd say it probably has to be like one of two ways with the rolling phasing piece. Number one, you either have to make it so monsters don't all surround you so much. So right now they're very smooth and a lot of mobs are quick to jump, get around you and swarm you, right? So that's number one. Number two would be, so you can either like reduce some of that so monsters, maybe move a little slower, some of them with it, or they're not all surrounding you as much, or there's more kind of gaps. Or number two is maybe have some phasing to it to allow you to kind of get away a little. Again, additionally, I think if you reduce some of the tuning of these white mobs as well, then it would also probably solve a lot of that problem because you wouldn't be constantly being surrounded. But as is, you're just like constantly fighting for that little gap to get through, which I like sometimes, but I do feel like that happens very often in the game and can be a little bit tiring to just come across that. So anyways, those are my 7 issues with Path of Exile 2 that I hope they fix up. Again, I'm still very positive on this game. I know that you might get to the end of this and you're like, all you did was complain. Go back to Diablo 2, loser. The constant comments that I'm sure we'll all see. But again, I have my positives video. Go watch that one if you want the positives. This is the places that I think need improvement. So I do hope that they will work on improving it. I mean, I know they will, but I do hope that they take some of this feedback and the feedback that we've just kind of seen all around from other people. I want them to keep the game difficult, but I do want them to make sure that tedious, boring isn't difficult, Like grind can be good. Searching 45 minutes on a map for finding a small key and having to fight a bunch of white mobs that aren't really giving me a lot of experience or any loot, maybe not so good, right? So there is a nice balance between all of that. Anyways, that's all I've got. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. Don't forget to like and subscribe, YouTube. Peace, everybody. I'll see you guys in the next one.